Firing the Colts, Chapter 1, The Wildcat and the Girl. The wildcat saw something move just beyond the trees, something small and weak. Gnawing hunger pushed him forward. He was downwind. The creature hadn't smelled him. He advanced quietly. Stacy Colt, to all but her father, was a complete enigma. At age 11, she was the youngest of the 5 children, but she could have been mistaken for the oldest in conversation. Normally, quiet as a tomb, she could wax eloquent if someone should query her on a topic she had considered well. She spent long hours alone, but her best friend was Jennifer, the most extroverted of the children. They had bonded as closely as any set of twins, though they were almost a year apart in age. On most things in life, they had taken almost diametrically opposed paths to reach their concept of reality, but ended up at the exact same place. They had never had a serious disagreement. Stacy had considered this apparent contradiction and decided that, no matter what path water took as it flowed, it always found its way to the sea. Reality existed, and in the end, all valid paths must converge. It was June 19, 16 AL, and the last star had winked out of the clear sky, as Lug was now peeking over the eastern horizon across Judy's Sea. The girl was a petite beauty who seldom smiled. In her bare feet, she stood a mere 4 feet 3 inches tall. Her lovely hair was thick, just the blonde side of brown, streaked with Lug-bleached golden lines. It fell in a tangled waterfall down her back and danced in the morning's ocean breeze. She was thin, even for her diminutive height. 65 pounds. She had hardly noticed the voice announcing her weight as she stepped out of the morning shower. Bert, the home artificial intelligence controller, had been a part of her entire life, and every morning it reported her weight and other health-related data. Since the Colt children were, by design, genetically perfect, and their nutrition and exercise was closely monitored and controlled, health reports were routinely good. Stacy stood like a statue, gazing across Sunrise Bay as Lug rose, its light dancing playfully across the incoming waves. Summer had arrived, driving the harsh Addis weather away, leaving behind this perfect day. The girl had spent many mornings standing in this very spot. Warmly bundled against rain or snow, she often preferred the exciting weather. Rain was a welcome companion as the water streamed off her shiny hood, running in happy rivulets down her raincoat to the ground. The wind stung her cheeks with cold drops, letting her know she was alive. A winter storm always brought out the robots to clear the path to her lookout, and her protective suit kept her warm as the landscape was covered with white. She thrilled at the beauty, and felt joy as the flakes danced wildly on their way to the ground. But today, the breeze was gentle, the sky was clear, and the quiet beauty could have seemed boring. But Stacy was not bored. Routine was soft upon her mind, and she greeted it like a dear friend. She walked in optimistic revelry. The creature was new to him, but it looked delicious. It was slow, clumsy, and defenseless. It had no claws or fangs. Its skin moved about in the wind like a bird's feathers. It might be fast, but it would be easy to kill once caught. The cat was moving silently. There would be no chance for escape. These solitary walks took Stacy upon a familiar route, towards the overlook where Judy's Sea lay beyond the mouth of their little bay. On her left, Cookie Creek cheerfully chatted with the rocks as it bounced its way to the edge of the cliff, and then leaped into the air, silently holding its breath until it hit bottom, where the cries of laughing drops ascended to her ears. She saw the perpetual miracle of a transparent stream churning into white opacity in its fall, as though a wizard had cast a temporary spell, which weakened and died at the bottom, where transparency returned, and Stacy could see the underbed of the stream as it ran into the bay. The smell of the sea rose to meet her, and blended with the sweet scent of pine from the Colt Valley. She gazed quietly at the panorama before her. It belonged to her, and she belonged to it. They were one, and it was good. As often happened, Stacy awoke that morning with an idea. She silently worried at the idea all through breakfast. Her mother, father, and her 4 siblings all knew better than to interrupt her working mind. The others had chatted away over the meal and ignored the quiet little introvert. Even when she helped to clear the table and to wash the dishes, she worked in silence. What is time? Is it part of the universe or the container for it? Is it a river that carries the universe along? What if time was only an abstraction and the change of all things only made time appear to exist? If time exists, what is its substance? How does it exist and why? Is it like the process of fossilization where living things are converted to stone? When something falls into the vat of the past, it is frozen forever into an unalterable state. If moving backwards, would a time machine present a landscape of mannequins and statues, unmoving because the entirety of their possible motions was exhausted by time? What then would it present in the future? Would she see a quantum blur of potential actions, not yet set because time had not yet reached them? As was her custom, Stacy stood looking at the sea, only long enough to absorb its peace into her inner being, as her mind sought and unfailingly found a mental path to follow as she analyzed what she was wrestling with. Once the path was selected, and she could feel her focus tighten down upon the idea clearly, she would turn her back on the bay and make the short climb to the rocky roof of her cave home to sit in her favorite spot beside the fireplace chimney that rose several feet above her. Her father had lovingly placed a comfortable bench there just for her. Once seated, again looking at the sea, her mind would begin to work the concept, disassemble it, and analyze the parts as the ocean breeze caressed her face and ruffled her soft hair. The last of the trees were before him. He would have to creep very quietly from this point on. Silence would be his ally as he approached. Unlike most 11-year-olds, solitude was Stacy's idea of bliss. She loved her family, and they were very understanding when she discussed her ideas with them, but they held her in awe. Only her father could track with her and where her mind was going. He always understood what she was struggling with and had already been there. She wasn't the little princess type, but she loved her dad unreservedly, and she admired his intellect, which to her was the highest possible compliment. Stacy took a deep breath and closed her eyes. It was a perfect morning. She loved the ocean, and standing here she understood how sailors once risked everything to ride upon its unpredictable surface in a small wooden ship. The breeze kissed her cheek, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly as joy filled her heart. Just being here this very moment. She was at peace, and absent-mindedly reached up and wiped a wind-blown bit of hair from her face, as the long yellow skirt of her dress fluttered in the breeze, slapping her legs playfully. A bird called out from above and fluttered away, but the cat gave it no notice. He was focused on the odd creature with only 2 legs. It must be a bird. He had to be very careful now. It was almost time to leap. As her mind was pulling apart the idea of time, Stacy briefly contemplated the fact that Attis had no fossils. The dinosaurs and their predecessors from the Permian, like the carnivore in Austrasevia, were no part of Attis, and the significance of being a transplant upon a world that had always been her home. She was a creature of Earth, though she had never set foot upon it, and this was something else that was changed by time. What if... Stacy started. She sensed something behind her. Whirling around, she was instantly horrified. There, not 15 feet away, crouched a merciless creature, with short tan fur and ears laid back. It was a wildcat, outweighing her by 50 pounds, and was creeping towards her. It was ready to pounce. She noted that details came in at her in perfect clarity. The snarling mouth, the long fangs, and the claws digging into the ground in preparation for the leap. The cat was sculpted by powerful muscles. She knew this animal could kill a pit bull as easily as it would a deer. Her heart was racing. She was instantly covered in sweat. Adrenaline was coursing through her veins. Her muscles tensed, ready for action. Her breath was short, and she knew there was no hope. There was no place she could run. There was no one to call. She froze into a statue. Predator and prey looked at each other, neither one moving a muscle. It was cat and mouse, and Stacy knew which part she was playing. What could she do? As fear rushed through her, something deep inside flared up, and a blue flash of light leaped out. What was that? The cat hesitated. The unexpected light caused him to pause. But then, it leaped. Stacy was frozen. She couldn't move a muscle. She felt as though it were a dream where she could take in every little detail. The long, vicious fangs, the terrifying roar of the victor ready for the kill, the paws set to rake her with their long, sharp claws, the distance between them rapidly closing, but she could not move away from the impending disaster. Her every muscle was clamped down in terror. She knew she would not awaken from this dream to find herself safely in bed. She somehow thought of Zeno and the paradox of halves. If he were right, the cat would never reach her. She knew Zeno was wrong. In less than a second, she would smell the putrid breath and feel unbearable agony as the cat's efficient weapons tore deeply into her flesh. Hope was gone. Her far too brief existence had come to an end. Stacy used her final instant to wonder what death would be like. The cat screamed, not in triumph of the kill, but in terror for its life. A silent white flash had hit it in its side, knocking it far out of its intended path. Stacy now had an escape route to the safety of the cave, but she remained motionless. She watched the two creatures battle it out briefly, with roars, blood, and vicious snarls. Very quickly, the wildcat, bleeding and overmatched, broke off the fight and ran as fast as its terrified legs would take it, searching for freedom. Stacy watched as the tiny ball of fur kept pace right behind the vicious killer, slashing at its retreating legs and hindquarters. Incongruently, the pursuer's name was Trinket. 3 weeks before, Bill Colt, Stacy's father, had dropped a white cat into the middle of the kids in the living room. He introduced the new pet without preamble. "Kids, this is Trinket." "What's that?" Melanie asked. The 13-year-old girl, already a gifted writer, was lying on the front room carpet across a chessboard from her 14-year-old brother. Her red hair was split into 2 streams, one running down her long back and the other flowing over her right shoulder, hitting the floor. Her ankles were crossed just beyond the hem of her skirt, and Bill could tell she was happy for a distraction from the game. Curtis, who was wearing casual black slacks and a light blue sports shirt, always beat his sisters, except for Stacy. She was 3 years his junior, but she won nearly half of their games. "It's a cat," Bill said, "at least sort of." "What do you mean, sort of?" Curtis asked. He pulled his hand back from the board, leaving his knight untouched. His blue eyes almost glowed as they peered out from under a black head of hair. "It looks like a cat," Bill said, "but it's a machine. It has a metal skin under the fur. It has metal claws and metal teeth. However, it will act like a normal cat most of the time. One improvement over the real thing, this cat won't scratch people or the furniture. Its metal teeth and retractable claws are only used on animals, especially when it's running outside on its own. Any predator that tries to eat this cat will have a big surprise coming. Nothing biological could harm it." "Is he safe?" Angela asked from the sofa. The 12-year-old girl, whose birthday was next month, pulled her self-feeding pencil away from her sketch pad as she looked at the cat with distrust. The girl's long hair matched her mother's honey blonde. Her gray eyes repeatedly surprised Bill, for her mother's were bright green, while in nearly every other way, Angela was a younger version of Cookie. They even liked to do the same things, and were both highly talented in tennis and art. "To our family, he will be as safe as a pillow," Bill said. "He might get in your way occasionally, but other than being a trip hazard from time to time, he'll pose no threat. Also, although he'll enjoy going outside, he'll never roam far from the cave." Trinket sat down and licked a paw, grooming his long white fur. His nose was pink, but otherwise he looked as white as new-fallen snow. Standing up slowly, he rubbed against Bill's leg, just as Jennifer came running into the room, looking for the source of the commotion. The girl had turned 12 last month and was eager to help out in the kitchen, where Mom was working at the moment. Jennifer's long hair, rich brown like her beautiful eyes, had been trailing behind her as she ran, but when she stopped, it hit her back like autumn leaves falling to the ground. Her captivating smile was set beautifully between matching dimples. Jennifer eagerly enjoyed each moment. She was selfless and giving. The others loved her deeply. They couldn't even imagine an alternative. A true extrovert, she enthusiastically sought companionship, the polar opposite of stoic Stacy. The only thing on Addis that rivaled her love for her family was her music. If Jennifer wasn't visiting with her family or playing the piano, she emotionally wilted in the isolation. Her only real fault was intruding upon others who were trying to read or to concentrate on something else. But it was impossible to be angry with her. There was no one in the family who was more prone to be reading or to be deep in thought than Stacy, but these two were the best of friends. "What's he good for?" Curtis asked. "I think he's darling," Jennifer said. She rose up on her tiptoes in delight. Unafraid, she ran over and picked Trinket up and rubbed her face in its soft fur. The cat tolerated the attention briefly before jumping down to the floor. "If he's in a chair where you want to sit," Bill said, "just push him out of the way. He won't scratch you." Trinket seemed to have the curiosity of a real cat, and he started sniffing around the floor. In time, he came up to Stacy's foot, protruding from the hem of her skirt. Trinket gave it a nudge. Getting no reaction, he gave it another. Stacy finally set her book reader down on her lap and looked at the cat. "So," Stacy said, "what do you want, Trinket?" The cat leaped up onto her lap, knocking the book reader aside, but hardly ruffling Stacy's yellow skirt in the landing. He rubbed his head gently against her stomach. Stacy threw her arms around the cat, and a friendship was created immediately. Curtis was shocked. Stacy normally guarded her book reader more than she did her own safety, but her brother had to roll over quickly to catch the falling reader before it hit the floor. Meanwhile, Stacy petted the cat and rubbed her face against the soft fur. Trinket curled up in her lap and promptly made himself at home. He had broken through her barrier and entered her heart. When Stacy realized what she had done, her eyes grew round. "Thank you, Kurt." "It's okay, sis. I never dreamed that I would see you forget about your reader like that." "Your gallantry is very much appreciated, Kurt." Stacy smiled as she took her treasure back. She then tickled the cat behind its ears, and then went back to reading Thus Spoke Zarathustra. However, one hand was continually stroking Trinket's long fur. When Trinket started to purr, the youngest colt stopped, and she studied the cat for a moment. When she was sure that nothing was amiss, she returned to her book. "Cats love attention," Bill said. "He'll usually take it from anyone. You'll all get your chance." I put Trinket's bed in the dining room beside the fireplace. It is also a charging station, and he needs to get some time sleeping there every day. Even biological cats spend most of their short lives sleeping, so that will seem quite natural. Beyond keeping his charge up, he is more or less self-sufficient. Cookie walked into the living room, drying her hands on her apron, which protected her light blue dress. "Well," she said, "you found a way to have a cat in the house. I know how you missed Blackbeard." Cookie stood just over 5 feet tall, and her thick honey blonde hair was in a ponytail today, though she usually wore it loose and flowing down her back. She didn't look a day over 19, but she had been Bill's wife for over 70 wonderful years. Beautiful, loving, and kind, she was simply perfect for him. Her captivating bright green eyes could range from flashing an emerald laser of anger to the softest green meadow carpet of love. And she had been his universe ever since the day he first met her in an easy shop market on Earth. But her physical charms were only the start of Bill's attraction to her. Cookie was brilliant, active, and exuberant about life, a Pollyanna optimist. Like Jennifer, she loved being around people. She was the inverse of pessimistic and introverted Bill, and it pulled them together like the opposite poles of two high-powered magnets. "You're right, Cookie," Bill said. He thought longingly of his old friend. Blackbeard was more than a pet to him. Like Trinket, Blackbeard had white fur, but he had a distinctive black mark on his chin, giving him his name. When Bill was working on his computer, even for long hours, Blackbeard would patiently curl up at his feet. Bill used Blackbeard as a sounding board, talking to him like a person, and this was so deeply ingrained that even on Addis he had caught himself talking to the memory of Blackbeard at times. He missed his old friend. Trinket's company would be welcome. The next few days, Trinket inspected all the rooms of the cave. He rubbed against Cookie's legs in the kitchen. He would be happy to occupy any free lap, and when no free laps were available, he would take an empty chair. The softer, the better. When the kids were out of the house or in bed, Trinket would join Bill working in his study. Bill had to watch himself at first, or he would slip and call the cat Blackbeard. Once again, Bill had a cat to talk to, and he loved it. It didn't matter on Addis any more than it had on Earth that the cat didn't talk back. Trinket liked everyone, but he took an exceptional shine to Stacy, and everyone noticed that he had a special dispensation to interfere with her reading, without penalty. The cat tended to slink around and get underfoot. If someone accidentally stepped on his paw or tail, he would make a big fuss, even though he wasn't really hurt. If the front door opened, he was almost always off like a shot to get outside, but it wasn't long before he was meowing to get back in. One day Bill came through the set of front doors and a mouse slipped past him from outside. Normally, Bert, the house computer, would track any entering pests, such as flying or crawling bugs, whether arachnoids or insects, and of course any rodents, and would use its robotic assistants to take care of the invaders quickly. However, on this occasion, the mouse never got to meet Bert's lethal aids. Trinket was on it before it got a yard into the room, and the rodent didn't even squeal before it died. Bill suspected a sharp claw hit a vital organ, perhaps the brain of the mouse. Trinket dropped the present at Bill's feet. Bill looked down at the cat, picked up the unwelcome present, and took it down the hall and dropped it into the trash vaporizer. The day was still bright and the sky was still blue, but the beautiful morning spell was broken. Emotionally, Stacy had just returned from the grave. She had not yet moved from the spot where she had faced death. However, when Trinket nonchalantly made his way back, he had let the wildcat live. The two of them headed to the cave entrance together. Her morning routine had been disrupted. Her brush with death had given her something new to contemplate. It was a seed planted in her mind. Even as the girl and the cat walked together, the seed was already growing. Lug was warming her back, but Stacy no longer cared. She would watch the seed develop and expand over the coming days. A dark idea was looming, creating a shadow over her.